Yeah, so it couldn't be much worse for the Liberals. I mean, and just the shenanigans. They called cabinet privilege on things that didn't take place in cabinet, and they claimed parliamentary privilege, which doesn't exist. They submitted redacted stuff, right? Stuff that they were supposed to share. They were supposed to share it and to prepare for the cross-examination that was going on at that time. And what happened is the cross-examination was happening. While the cross-examination was happening, they dumped 300 pages of heavily redacted paper in front of them. Like, it was that bad. It's that bad. Like, let's get facts straight. It's starting to sound like Jordan Peterson. I want to be precise. Remember, he got in that fight at the Monk School, right? Monk School, Jordan Peterson, and the guy that wrote the book Mythology, Stefan, big fat gay guy, I don't know. He's a real serious intellectual. He and Jordan Peterson discussed woke stuff at the Monk School. The Monk School needs to have a debate on whether or not that invocation of the act was justified. That is a perfect example for the Monk School to do something really interesting. Because the full depravity of this needs to be examined. What I've said is correct. What I said in the last video is correct. Serious people told him that invoking the act was dangerous. No security person in the world would recommend facing a protest of that commitment with insults and by ignoring them and calling them, what the Liberals think to be really the vilest insult there is to be a racist. That's the worst thing you can be, right? So they wanted to paint it that way from the beginning. Before the convoy even arrived, they were constructing the narrative that was kind of a January 6th inspired thing. And I guess the thing is it kind of was. Let's face it, it kind of was. But that doesn't mean that they didn't have a good case against the government, a good reason to protest the government. Fucking right, they had a good reason to be protesting the government. The government really mishandled a lot of things. I don't think any other G7 country had mandates on inter-provincial or state travel. I don't think so. We had really quite strict restrictions, and right at the end they had to pinch off this last little one, right? They just had to pinch that last one out there, putting the mandate on the truckers. They weren't quite finished shitting on us yet. I had to pinch another one out. That's why I like Turdo. Turdo. He's a turd. He is a turdo. Like we all know already. And are you not convinced? Okay. Okay, so if you're not convinced yet, geez, like I have to refer to my notes. Damn it. Okay, here's this one. I haven't seen this. Like this, the thing is that so much of what I just said in the last one is absolutely documented already, right? People told him not to do it. People told him invoking it was dangerous. People told him that doing it was going to take 30,000 trucks off the road, right? He knew all that stuff and did it anyway. He couldn't be in a worse position. At some point, may I start to feel sorry for him? Maybe tomorrow if he confesses his sins and begs for forgiveness. Otherwise, not a chance. But my forgiveness doesn't mean anything to him, so it doesn't. There's nothing to it. Like it's. I don't know. I don't see how forgiving him is even an issue because it never crosses my mind anyway. I'm just talking about what the person is, trying to remain as non-emotional as possible. Okay, so this is an interesting thing. At one point in the inquiry, Freeland was asked about the workers' protest in Poland that brought down an authoritarian regime. So this is just my notes. I'm just watching the inquiry, taking notes, right? So at one point in the inquiry, Freeland was asked about the workers' protest in Poland that brought down an authoritarian regime. considerable violence and disruption was associated with that strike, and I bet people could really expand upon that. Freeland expressed her respect for that protest since it removed an authoritarian government. Okay, so I've written it actually. Freeland expressed, with no hint of irony, her respect for that protest since it removed an authoritarian regime. Okay, now, so the reason that is curious is because if anything is clear about that protest, it was not just about the mandate. That's clear. It was not just about the mandate, and the lockdowns caused considerable damage. People are still waiting in line for operations because of that. But what was totally lacking, though, it seemed to be any awareness that really there's a massive number of people in Canada that think of her as an authoritarian. So she's the authoritarian. We're protesting like we're supposed to do. If dictatorship is a fact, then revolution is a duty. That's what I learned from freedom protesters in Taiwan. We had, I think, something like 600,000 people. Just totally took over not the downtown, but the government district for sure. More than the government district. I mean, it was a massive thing. It's 600,000 people. And that's what I took out of it. If dictatorship is a fact, then revolution is a duty. And that's how a lot of the truckers saw it. So as difficult as that might be for some people to understand, that's how they saw it, and for good reason. So, during the mandates, they went after the right to freedom of movement, of bodily autonomy, informed consent. Bodily autonomy is a big one. You couldn't stay employed or travel without getting the vaccine, right? And there's no way that we could have had consent because not enough information had come in about the virus to give meaningful consent. It was an experimental drug, not been tested over the period of time that it normally takes. So they're forcing us to take it. And now what's happening is that there's serious evidence. It's like there doesn't need to be any more evidence that it's associated with really a lot higher risk of heart attack in men between 30 and 50, which is not ironic but soulful. It's men between 20 and 50 that are dying off, right? So if they can't get us one way, they'll get us another. And the thing is it wasn't even a vaccine. The vaccine wasn't a vaccine because it didn't limit the spread. So it's not a vaccine. And it's starting to have, serious effects: myocarditis, pericarditis, Bell's palsy, increased menstrual flow, among others. So bodily autonomy was the big one that they violated, and not very safely. It hadn't been tested. They can't guarantee it to be safe that conclusively. They could claim that that's what they thought that it was, but they can't say that they really had long-term evidence of it. And as the evidence piles up, it looks like the people rejecting the vaccine were right on that, especially if you're a guy between 20 and 50. But who cares about them, right? I'm not saying that people don't care about 20 to 50-year-olds. I'm just saying that they don't. That's clear. Oh, that's clear. I mean, okay, so the property rights, people had a right to make those contributions. People had a right to the money in their bank. They violated those two freedoms. And they engaged in the malicious prosecution of Dinar Lich. They violated the right to freedom of peaceful protest. As long as you're peaceful, you can protest as long as you want. And in front of the Parliament Hill, they had remained peaceful. So we're just talking about why it's so ironic that she admired the Polish people fighting authoritarianism, but
doesn't seem to understand that she's an authoritarian now. She's the authoritarian now. She used to be really big on criticizing the WEF because it was such a system that just made the rich richer and the poor poorer. But now she's a member. She's not as critical. She's an example of power and wealth and all that fame and everything really having its way on a person. So authoritarians do it. They corrupt the media. I mean, there couldn't be any argument about whether or not the CBC, Global, CTV, and that it was paid for by Turdo. And what's been amazing about it recently is that because this hearing is very important, it's on the news all the time. So I watch the hearings and get one set of key features from it, and that the news organizers just totally ignore the most interesting stuff, the most interesting and the most important stuff. So authoritarians censor speech. They're divisive. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is absolutely divisive. It's divisive to call us all racist and all that. It's so boring by now. Authoritarians turn educational institutions into indoctrination centers. I don't just know everything inside government, nothing outside. Oh, hey, did you know that they considered invoking the act just in relation to the COVID stuff? So beyond the measures that they took, they were also thinking about bringing in the Emergencies Act for that. They admitted it. What more restrictions could they have put on people? And there's a lot of harm that was done by that stuff. A lot of economic harm, just massive debt and all the rest of it. Rich get richer, poor get poorer, more of that because of those things. Lost employment opportunities. I think the number of businesses that died was like in the tens of thousands. I'm sure it was. So I just get into, CSIS was saying, don't do it. Don't bring in the act because, you just piss them off more. I mean, these people are fighting against what they think is an authoritarian thing, right? So now, at the very end of it, just as it was all kind of settling out, they come in with their most authoritarian measure yet, which is the Emergencies Act. So people who are fighting against authoritarianism, how's that going to make them feel? Are they going to feel more committed to their cause or less? Did you really think that they're just going to be scared now because you did this? Now, what you have to hope now, and what I have to hope as well, is that this stuff is straightened out really well before Poilievre is elected. Because the way that this is decided is either going to make it easier or more difficult to impose the act. And the Liberals are already talking about making it easier to enact. Can you believe this? Can you believe that? They're working on already. They're working already on making the act easier to invoke. There's no bottom. There's no bottom. I've been studying this kind of thing for a long time, and this sensation that the depravity of it is bottomless keeps being surpassed. But this is the best one ever. This is a very happy Turdo Christmas.